If you ever feel like life's happening too fast and you've got no time to cry, you're in the right place. Hello, welcome back to the No Time to Cry podcast. Hopefully, by now, you've caught the reboot episode and you know everything about where I've been, why I had so much time off, why it's just me. So, I'm hoping I don't need to go over that all over again. If you haven't, go back, watch it, catch up, find out what the hell's been going on, because this week we are going into a specific topic, and that will be the case kind of episode after episode. So if you haven't, now's a great opportunity to go and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, you know the drill. I hate kind of begging for that, but to be honest, it does obviously really help us out. And I hope you've started to watch some of my videos and hopefully you're laughing with me, not at me. But if you are, just drop a little like at least if you're going to take the piss out of me. But I told you, 2026, I have no embarrassment this year. It is the year of just going for it. And to be honest, I just think, yeah, I am 29. I am making silly little TikToks and I've got no shame. So, how about that? So, this episode today, I really wanted to go into a topic that I had a couple of messages about when I was speaking about the reboot, because the whole point of No Time to Cry is about being an adult, what a load of bollocks it is. Everything's just a massive scam. You never really feel grown up, even when you are grown up. You never really feel you've got your shit together. But there was a topic that kept coming up and up and up. And it's something that actually hit quite close to home for me currently. And I know it impacts so many of my friends, so many of my family. And if you're a guy listening to this episode, it'd be really easy for me to go, oh, clock off. This is a girl's episode. We're going to talk about hormones and all that sort of stuff. But actually, I think it's really important for you to engage and listen to the episode, because I know certainly from like the men in my life, it can be stressful for them as much as it is us in terms of women's hormones, knowing what to do, knowing what to support. As much as I think, you know, I'm not being funny, we have to deal with a lot more than you do. But actually, I know from Jamie's perspective, I can only talk for myself, like it does really impact him as well, because there's certain days of the month where I can't leave the house. And I'll get into like my situation a little bit more. But if you're living with someone or you want to live with someone and you don't know anything about hormones or periods or menopause or any of the conditions that women can get, lock in. Listen, let me land. Let me tell you about it. And I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I can only talk about kind of the experiences that I have, my friends and family have had, and also doing a little bit of research, you know, looking into it, having a look at what I wanted to talk about today. And I'm not going to lie, it's a minefield. It is an absolute minefield. And I know there's a couple of conditions that specifically that I wanted to talk through just because it's impacted people around me, one of which is PCOS. So I feel like whenever I'm online now and TikTok and stuff like that, you hear a lot more about PCOS, but actually there's loads of things about it that people don't talk about. So it's like the brain fog, the sugar crash, that kind of overall feeling of just being a bit wonky, if I'm honest. I feel like I read all the time about like women having a bit more facial hair when they've got PCOS, acne, those kind of things. And that's like the tip of the iceberg. And I feel like when you're struggling with a condition like that, it's actually really hard to diagnose as well. And I know so many of my friends that have gone to the doctors with certain symptoms. And to be honest, this is the case for all of the things that I'm going to talk about today, and haven't had a great experience. I know that they can do some some testing to see if they think you've got PCOS or not. Like always, unfortunately, and I'm not bad mouthing GPs because I know it's not an easy job, but there's a lot of friends of mine who have been kind of brushed off and told their symptoms are normal and that nothing's wrong with them, and they've had to push and push and push for that additional kind of blood tests and things like that. But it can really impact your life. We all get body hair. And if there's anyone sat here listening now who tells me that they aren't plucking little hairs out of moles once you hit kind of past your mid 20s and shit like that, you're lying or you're really lucky, one of the two. But I know for a lot of my friends who do have PCOS, they've had to have laser and things like that because of facial hair. And I say have to, and obviously nobody has to do anything, but it's an insecurity that people have. And naturally, like there's a lot of pressure on women to look a certain way. And if you are struggling with body hair or excessive body hair, as some might say, or you've got, hairs coming through on your chin, on your face, it is hard because I think there is a pressure for everybody to look perfect, be perfect. And if you're sat there going, oh, fuck, I've got to wax my face, or I've got to do this, or I've got to do that, and you feel self conscious about it, and you feel like, you can't speak to your friends about it, or you feel embarrassed, what I will say is, like I said before, all of us will be plucking hairs out of places we wish we weren't plucking hairs out of and stuff like that. But it's more important to talk about it because the more people you talk to about it, the more likely it is that people are going to be able to go, oh my God, I suffer with that as well. Or I know my sister has that, or my friend has that, or, let me see what advice they got or what medication they're taking. I know some, and I don't know how true this is, but I've seen a lot of women who have PCOS who have struggled with conceiving and having babies. And there is a kind of a notion in terms of like in the PT world that I've seen and fitness industry that says, oh, you can kind of counteract PCOS by losing weight. And I think there's always an element of truth in terms of being fit and healthy usually helps any medical condition. But there's not a magical trick. There's not a one fixed trick. And I think we have to be really careful when we're seeing stuff online to make sure that we're getting medical advice from medical professionals and not kind of just scrolling and watching TikToks and getting all of our advice from there. So what I would say is if you are on kind of that hormonal TikTok or Instagram reels, make sure that you're kind of taking it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because I'm not saying it won't help if you're, slightly overweight or you are a slightly heavier woman and you're struggling with PCOS as well. But I know I was looking at some TikToks this week around kind of hormones and stuff like that. And there was a bit of a message around like, oh, you just need to lose some weight. And I know some people would have heard that from their GP as well. But I know some people that are really, really thin and also have PCOS. So I don't think it's fair to say that there's kind of one experience or one truth of how to solve it. But really talking, as always, I will always say that's the kind of best bit, and advocate for yourself, go to the doctors, make sure that you're getting second opinions. And I know for one of the other things I wanted to talk about being endometriosis, there's a couple of my friends that have had surgery because I feel like that's, the only real way you can find out whether you've got it or not. And they've really, really, really had to push with their doctors to have it looked into, because everyone was saying, that's normal, that's normal. And you would have heard me on the first episode go, well, what's normal for you might not be normal for me. And it doesn't fucking feel that normal. So make sure that you're going back and asking questions. I mean, I've actually recently had a really good experience with a GP in terms of looking into stuff, but I know that hasn't been the case for so many of my friends, and probably a lot of people listen to this now. So if you're struggling with that kind of endo belly, like you're normally flat stomach, but then all of a sudden your belly's out here, I think natural bloating is normal alongside a menstrual cycle. But if you're having severe bloating or severe pains, or excessive bleeding, all things like that, make sure you go to your GP and don't do what I've done, which is put it off for like probably 2 years, because I'm having some tests done at the moment because I have some really, really, really horrible symptoms that come alongside my period. And I'll be honest, guys, I just buried my head in the sand for a long time. because I came off my contraceptive pill a couple of years ago, just because I'd been on it for a really, really long time. I'd been on a contraceptive since I was sort of 14, 15. And that was because I had really, really heavy periods really young. And no one ever looked into it. They just whacked me on a pill when I was like 15 years old. And I took that right through until I was about 25. Tried a few different ones, but maybe even longer. How old am I now? 29. Yeah, maybe like up to 27, about 12 years full of being on some sort of contraceptive. And realistically, when I think back, I went on that when I was 14 or 15. I probably didn't have or hadn't had many natural periods that weren't kind of medically induced. And that just didn't really sit right with me. And at the time, I was suffering a little bit with my anxiety and stuff, which I know I've spoke about before. And I just thought, right, I'm going to come off it. Obviously, Jamie and I had the conversation because, guys, there ain't no babies for in here, about what we were going to do instead. And I was just going to try it for a while and see. And I did feel better in terms of just letting my body work itself out for a year, kind of getting its back into its raw. I've always had bad periods, even when I was on the pill, and I say bad as in like bad symptoms of like pains. Not anything too abnormal, but I'd kind of maybe have a really bad one like every 3 months or something like that. And yeah, my body was kind of working itself out. What does my own periods look like? How often do they come? How long's my cycle? And I was tracking them. And then there was a bit of a like switching point where I just, in the last like year or so, where they were just really, really bad, to the point where I was like getting faint, just couldn't get out of bed, having to take really strong painkillers. But I would wake up in the middle of the night. Like, obviously, if you take a tablet every 4 hours, or what I would do is kind of rotate between a couple and try and do them sooner. I would wake up in the middle of the night with the pains of when I was due a tablet, because they were that bad. Bleeding just super heavy. Like I say, just like nauseousness. Luckily, I work from home in kind of my full career. I don't know how to word that, because obviously I do this on the side of a grown-up job. And I really think in the last year I would have struggled to be in the office. And there's been a couple of times where, in the last, I think just before Christmas, I was on a call with a client, and I went really faint and dizzy and had to come off the Teams call and literally had to call Jamie. Luckily, he was working locally and came home and kind of, kept an eye on me. So I'd made it one of my kind of, I don't want to say jobs, but things to do this year, as to take a bit of care of my kind of menstrual health, because I think it's been impacting me a lot. I won't really go out. There's been a couple of times. I mean, poor Paula, you would have all heard about her, but she's obviously one of my best friends. Unfortunately, every time we seem to get on a flight somewhere together, I come on my period, and I've left her for like an hour and a half in an airport on her own whilst I'm killed over in like a cubicle in a toilet, like praying and taking medication, and just sat there like bent in half, kind of trying not to faint, but also trying not to cry, or just, that's not normal. And nobody should tell you that it is. And I think you kind of put it off because of that conversation around, oh, well, am I just being dramatic? Am I just being, a bit of a wimp over it? We all go through it. And it's only when you start talking to some more of your friends that you realize not everyone does have that. Not everyone is in pain for 7 days, or on the week leading up to it, their back's like crippled. I think it's normal to have some pains. It's a muscular thing, right? Your body is kind of pushing something out. You're always going to have muscular pains, but to that sort of intensity, it's not, it's not normal, and it's not bearable. And I think what's pushed me this year is getting married, because the idea that I might be on my period for my wedding when I literally struggle to get out of bed or stand upright, I can't do that, guys. I can't do it. It'll ruin my wedding day. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it literally will. And I can't be in the headspace where I'm worrying about that. Now, I know I can't 100% rule it out, and that's fine. You know, when you're stressed about stuff or on the lead up to stuff, sometimes that plays around with your periods and things anyway. But if I can do anything this year to kind of get myself in a good headspace around it, work out what's going on, then I'm going to do that because I feel like it's good timing. So I've been to the doctors. I've decided to go back on my contraceptive temporarily just so I can get some order around my periods and kind of work out the timing as well in terms of trying to be on my good week. And if you're not watching, I've just done kind of the little fingers either side for my wedding and try and plan it out. And I'm on a contraceptive where you do 3 weeks on, 1 week off. That's always worked the best for me over like a 30-day pill where I think it's normally like a single hormone pill. They just don't work for me. I just spot the whole way through. And I've gone for some blood tests. So I'm going to say this completely wrong. In fact, I'm going to put it in titles so you guys can look at it. But it's called like, this is why I've got my iPad next to me now, guys, because it is handy. Okay, so I'm still going to say it wrong, but it's menorrhagia or menorrhagia. And essentially, my doctor thinks that I've got that, and that's kind of like his initial idea. And really, what it equates to is really heavy periods, but they impact your day-to-day life. So really intense pain, really intense bleeding. I've had a blood test this week, and I'm waiting for the results for that because I'm also vegan, so there might be a bit of an iron issue going on. I've also had it fed back in like other medical settings that I don't clot very fast, so I get Botox done, guys. You know, hit up my lady. She's incredible. But even when she gives me Botox, I bleed, which she was like, the first time she did my Botox, it really freaked her out. And she's a doctor. So I go to like a proper medical professional. And she was like, you're one of the, obviously, I've been going to her a couple of years now. She was like, you're one of the only people that bleed, like, if not the only, when I give Botox. She was like, it's so strange. And I've had like IV drips and I always get really bad bruises. I've got a really bad bruise from my blood test. When I've had like cannulas in my hand goes black. So there might be a bit of a kind of clotting issue there in terms of with blood, which might kind of go towards why I'm having such intense pains as well. But if it's not that, then I'm going to keep pushing. So even though I've decided to go back on my contraceptive, I'm not going to let that drop and just say, oh, well, I'm on a contraceptive now, because I'm going to keep an eye on it. I'm going to see how it is. I'm going to see what's going on. But the doctor was great. I didn't have to ask for a blood test. He was like, I want to send you off for a blood test. I want to do this. I want to do that. Here's your options. Told me that if I didn't want to go back on a contraceptive, there is medication that can maybe help with the symptoms that aren't related to contraception. So I'm just, I don't want to be on a contraceptive long term, just because I think from a headspace perspective, I've felt a lot better being off it. And I'm on a different one this time than what I was previously, although it's very similar in terms of chemicals. I don't know. I just feel like there's no issue if contraceptive really works for you. And I think, if you find it really hard to practice any other form of safe sex, then go on it, right? If you don't want a baby. But I feel like Jamie and I've been off it for a couple of years now. We handle that situation really well, specifically because we don't want any little babies running around. We've already got a 16-year-old, my stepson, if you guys haven't watched before, and we don't want to start again, guys. We don't want to start again. So, it's kind of just managing what's right for you. But for me, it's not something that I want to be on forever. So I kind of just need to weigh up my options. But for this year, it suits me. Hopefully I've got a good few months to get in some order, and hopefully it will help ease some of the symptoms, even if it's just the practicality of knowing the exact day that I'm going to come on, because that, will help me just, I think, in terms of feeling a little bit better, because they can be a little bit irregular as well, which doesn't help matters. I wanted to talk about some of the other kind of symptoms that people get, but I've gone into my situation a little bit earlier than I would have liked. But, it's my podcast. I'll go with whatever flow I like. So if you're in the same situation as me, please go to the doctors, because I've kind of been putting up with it for a couple of years now, and I'm just not prepared to anymore. I feel like There's something about nearly turning 30 as well that makes you like reassess your situation, I think. And it's sat there going, I'm a fucking grown up. I shouldn't really put this to the back. Like, how long am I gonna let this rule my life? And I regularly say to Jamie, like, I love being a woman, but I fucking hate it sometimes. Like, genuinely detest it because there's so many parts of being a woman that just doesn't feel fair, but it also feels like luck of the draw. And he's super sympathetic whenever I'm on my period and really understanding. And that's why I'm with him, right? Because he's a good guy. But I know there's times where he sits there and's like, I genuinely don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to help you. It does get bad, guys, where I cry sometimes. Considering this is called the No Time to Cry podcast, there is times where it will make me cry just because it's painful, but also your hormones are all over the place. Like, my hormones really do a good one on me, right? I wouldn't say I'm an overly emotional person. I can be, but I wouldn't say I'm overly emotional. But if you catch me the week before my period, fuck me. I am going to cry like a baby. Oh, it's a fly. Put an advert on the telly, anything to do with animals being hurt. I mean, I do cry at those anyway, but watching videos online, I cried this week. I don't know if you guys have seen this TikTok, this guy who does TikToks. His TikTok's called like Plumes or something like that. And he sings to animals in zoos. Now, I'm not a big fan of animals being in captivity, but I love this guy's TikToks because just that kind of connection between humans, animals, and music. There was this little penguin and he's trying. He's playing on his guitar, and the penguin's so intrigued by what it is and the sound. And he tries to climb on his lap and he can't get onto this guy's lap and he falls off. I started crying. Now, I thought to myself, would that normally make me cry? Um, Maybe if I've had a bad week. But I would like to, I'd be more like, oh God, that's so cute. She was in tears. She was in tears. And I just, it's an emotional roller coaster. And when that falls at like different times and different things, I mean, I get snappy as well. Like, I do get snappy at Jamie. Things irritate me a lot more. And I know there's a lot of women that suffer with that. Now, I have some women in my life, and I won't call yous out, but I know you watch this podcast, who have suffered with their periods all of their life and have had to go to the doctor because the aggression that comes alongside being on their period is so intense. Like, just really like aggressive thoughts. And I think they're intrusive thoughts, but they're aggressive ones that come with real aggression behind them. That's also not normal. If that's, I don't feel like you should feel like you're having a full personality change when you're menstruating. So look into it. Don't kind of let it sit there. Don't do what I've done and sit with years and kind of put it off. And I know there's been kind of in the last couple of years a bit more around PMDD and how that can impact your moods and suicidal ideations, struggling with depression at certain times of the month, anxiety, like I said, aggression. These are all things that kind of like, oh God, is she on her period? She's really fuming. Oh, she must be on her period. Well, actually, no, you're just a prick, but maybe I am as well. And I think we kind of get brushed off because everyone's like, oh God, yeah, oh, she's sensitive. She must be on her period, which I fucking hate people saying. But there is a side of that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's right and that it should be taking over your life. So call up your GP, say, listen, I don't feel like this is normal. I'm having these symptoms. I want a blood test. I want you to look into it and try and get to some answers. Now, if you don't suffer at all, I'm going to say something to you now. Keep an eye out as you get older because you may well find also our hormones change so much as we age and as we get older. And there is a couple of women in my life that are perimenopausal or are starting their menopause or perimenopausal late 30s, 40, which I'm not going to lie, guys, I didn't know was a thing until a couple of years ago. I thought you get your menopause when you're like 50, 60. That is not the case at all. For some women, it is. For some women, it comes a hell of a lot earlier. And I've never, ever heard anyone talk about that except for the company that I work with has a lot of ladies that are of the older generation in, and they started talking about menopause in work. And I was like, oh, really interested. My mum's of an age where she's heading towards menopause. I want to know a little bit more about it. My mum's always really suffered with her periods and stuff. It would be good to hear. And she's had a real issue kind of hitting that age. And, is it menopause? Is it not? All these kind of things. Boy. Now, I would always say, I can't wait until I don't have periods anymore. Let me tell you something, ladies. It doesn't get much fucking easier once you hit your menopause. I want to talk about something actually. First of all, brain fog and stuff like that. I think that does happen when you're in your periods, but I know it hits women really hard when they're menopausal. And I was reading something the other week and I find this so interesting. So, for a lot of women, they have a strong sex drive in their 20s. Maybe you don't, but maybe you do. Then maybe you have some kids and it gets a little bit harder for you and your partner to, make time to have sex, make times to have those sort of relations. Then your kids get older. They start going out, maybe leaving home, maybe going to university. Then what happens, depending on the timings of when you've had kids, you hit your fucking menopause and your vagina goes. Now, I didn't know this. So it's called vaginal dryness. It's a real thing, like literally just like zero lubrication in your vagina. Dry eyes as well. I had a woman come in and do a talk at my work about menopause, and that she had found it really, really hard to be given this form of like testosterone, which is supposed to really help if you're suffering with with menopause and symptoms of menopause. And it was literally, she had to go back to the doctors 5 times. But a friend of hers had a partner who was suffering with, what do you call it? Erectile dysfunction. Very similar, not the exact same medication, but very similar. Went to doctors, was given testosterone straight away. There's something in that burns like a flame inside me in terms of like women's health being brushed aside, and that it's just not taken seriously enough in terms of how that impacts you and how it impacts relationships. And for a lot of women who have maybe always had a really healthy sex drive, to then feel nothing at all or just complete. And I think it was Ruby Wax actually who was speaking about this on I'm a Celeb this year, or last year, sorry, that you kind of reach a certain age and it just disappears. Like you literally have nothing, like no desire at all. That terrifies me because I think that shouldn't be the case, right? You shouldn't get to a certain age and then that just kind of goes away. But also, if you become perimenopausal when you're in your 30s or 40s, imagine how much that can impact your marriage or your relationship. And how confusing it is because you love your partner, you've always been with them, you've always wanted to have sex with them, and all of a sudden, what a head fuck that now you've just got no desire whatsoever, but also how difficult for your partner that your partner sat there going, why are you not attracted to me? Or why are you not initiating the way you used to? Or why is our relationship all of a sudden just hit this dry spot? And I know there's a couple of women that when they take a pill as well, they have that has that same effect for them. And I just think no one's really talking about it. And it makes me kind of upset because I think you have to be prepared. Like I'm about to turn, well, I'm not about to, don't age yourself, Shannon. In 9 months, I will be 30. Time goes quickly. You never know when you're going to fall into. Sometimes people get put into an induced menopause. So if you have any issues with you have to have a hysterectomy, which someone I know quite close to me had to have a hysterectomy in the last couple of years. And that puts you into an induced menopause. And it's had such an impact on them and just like their mental health and how they feel about themselves and their relationship. And I think, oh my God, it never ends. It never ends. And that's why it is like the biggest scam ever in terms of like being a woman, because you kind of have this really, really short window of time when you're a child where you kind of, you're prepubescent and you don't have all of these symptoms. Then you hit puberty, your hormones run wild, you start getting spots, you start having all these weird feelings, you start growing pubic hair. Then you deal with your periods your whole life. And if you're lucky, they're manageable. But if you're not, they fuck you up. And you think, oh, one day I'm going to get to my menopause and I'll be fine. Biggest lie, because then again, if you're lucky, you might have a really easy menopause, and then once you're postmenopausal and it's all stopped and you're chill, you'll be a bit older, you might be more relaxed, whatever. But no, if you have a bad run in terms of bad periods, bad kind of menopause, maybe you've had endometriosis whacked in there, maybe you've got thyroid issues, which is another hormonal thing that I want to touch on, and how that impacts your mood, how it impacts your kind of body temperature, which is a massive thing that people with their menopause struggle. So if you've had thyroid issues all your life, struggle with hot flushes, mood swings, things like that, then you hit your menopause and it's a double whammy. Like, I just feel like we have it hard, and that's okay to talk about. And I feel like we should be talking about women's health more. We should be pushing for that conversation. And I hope any of you guys that are listening, or men, have held on, listened through, because it's not easy. And have some sympathy for your mum, your sister, your partner, your friends, of what it's like, because it's so different for every woman as well. Like, I know that for a fact, because every single woman around me has had some sort of difference in how their periods kind of are, how they're struggling with hormonal issues. There's at least 3 women in my life that have had to have thyroid surgery. Whether that's a removal, they've got overactive or underactive, and it's impacted their weight, it's impacted their mood, it's impacted how they feel about themselves. Even having a scar on your neck, which unfortunately for a couple of those that have had to have surgery, I mean, if you're lucky, then it's nice and neat and stuff like that, but it can still have a play a part on how you feel about yourself. And I feel like there's a kind of a lot of things get blamed on like social media and stuff like that, but women feeling self-conscious or some kind of way, or having anxieties, or being more emotional or whatever, has been blamed a lot in like the last few years on what you see in magazines and or now what you're seeing on social media. But I feel like it's so much more than that. I feel like there's so many of us that are struggling with like hormonal imbalances that actually it wouldn't really matter what you were looking at, what you were seeing. In some kind of way it would play a part in terms of like where your headspace is. You might not be on any social media platforms, you might not read any magazines, you might not be there, but you're still going to see people, you're still going to interact with people, you're still going to go into work and have a conversation and be like, oh my God, was I really rude then? Was I really snappy? And I think that's something to do with society, but I also think there's a big part of hormones that play into that. So yeah, I just feel like this is kind of tip of the iceberg. And if there's anything more specific that people really want me to go into, let me know. And I'm more than happy to do the research, do the conversations, and like if there's one part of it. But I bet there's things I've said today on this podcast that some people have never even heard of. Because if you haven't got people around you that have had thyroid issues, have had endometriosis, have PCOS, have PMDD, are perimenopausal in their 30s, you might not know about it. And then if you then suffer, it hits you like a ton of bricks because you never knew it existed, right? So if there's something that I can do in terms of having that conversation, and even if it's like 10 people listen to this podcast and then someone goes, oh my God, I didn't even know that's a thing, but I'm really aggressive when I'm on my periods and I just thought that was like normal PMS. Well, no, not necessarily. Like, get it looked into, because that could be having such an impact on like your relationships, your friendships, your relationships with a partner. And if you are a guy listening to this and your partner really suffers when they're on their period or on the lead up to their period, have a conversation with them about it. Tell them that you've listened to this. Tell them that you think, handle it with a little bit of kindness and make sure you do it in the right way. Don't say, listen, you're an absolute bitch the week of your period. I don't think that's right. Let's be soft about it. Let's be sensitive, but have those conversations. I mean, I'm so lucky to be able to talk to Jamie about my periods, about if I'm suffering, whether I've got this, whether I've got that, whether I think things are in a different way. I know not everybody's got that relationship with their partner, but, say for instance, you're in a lesbian relationship and you're both suffering, and that can really add to, obviously, I don't know if people know this, if you've got close friends or whatever, but you can sync up as well. Like, imagine for my dad like when we were growing up, or my stepdad, me, my sister, my mum, all having our periods at the exact same time, all three of us really suffering with them, actually, which I asked my doctor the other day if it's hereditary, and he said that doesn't there's no medical evidence of it, but I don't believe him. I just think there's something in that, right? If all of your family have suffered with them, surely that can't be that has to be something in that, in terms of, is there like a genetic difference in people kind of suffering with periods or not? But like I say, having a partner who supports you through a really difficult menopause or a really difficult periods or hormonal issues, that's going to make the world of difference. Because if all of a sudden you stop finding that want or desire, or your partner is fucking doing your head in, and you think it might be because of your hormones, if you don't tell them, they could take it a complete different way. And that could end up having a really bad time in your relationship, as well as the hormone issues that you're dealing with. So I think being able to communicate and talk will always be the best thing that you can do, whether it even just be with your friends to start off with, and getting an idea of what it's been like for them. Message me, ask me, find out about my experiences. I'm happy to talk to anyone, but I just feel like having a conversation about it is the most important thing to do. And we live in a generation where we can talk about absolutely anything. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I have got no shame anymore. I just feel like we should be talking about stuff that impacts us. So if that means I'm talking about whether I'm on a contraceptive or not online, if that means I'm talking about my period health and my, women's health online, I'm going to do it. If that's talking about sex, sexual attraction, okay, I'm going to have some limits there, guys. I'm not a tell-all. I think Jamie would kill me, but I think it's important to talk about things where it could impact other people. And there's definitely been times in kind of the last few years where friends of mine have come to me and said, I don't know what the hell is going on, but I am not interested in sex whatsoever. And they have gone years without sleeping with their partner, or months. And that, obviously, there's other reasons why you might not be. There might be other things, like emotional things going on in your relationship as to why that be. But I do feel like we should be, in an instance, going, is there a potential for a hormonal issue to be playing a part in this? Like, why is it happening? And that's not always the case. Like, I've had friends that have been in situations like that where it's just been more to do with the relationship that they're in. But actually, for a lot of people, it came at a time where they'd maybe just changed a contraceptive, or they were hitting a different kind of age bracket where your hormones change. Like, I don't know if there's I think it's when you're 25, like your facial structure changes and your hormonal balance is changes again. Oh, guys, I'm not being funny, but it's just like Mother Nature, you taking the piss. Because why does it never end? So yeah, just talk, have a conversation. Don't get caught up on the TikToks online. Try and get some medical support and help. Do you know what? For a lot of people, you will have medical support for your work. Certainly if it impacts your career, which I know for some women it really does. Because like I said, I'm really lucky to be able to work from home when when I'm on. That's not the case. If I was, for a lot of women, so if I was going into the office, and in the last year, one, would I have probably gone to the doctor sooner? Probably. Two, would I maybe have had to have left work or have time off? Yeah, I would have. Which in that case, it would have impacted my career in terms of, having that I've got a male boss. I don't particularly want to talk to him about my my menstrual cycle. I don't think he would have anything bad to say, but it's just uncomfortable, right? It's really personal to me. And I don't particularly want to have those conversations. But if it's impacting your life to that extent, then it will do. So you've just got to find that balance and have a look at your like EAP through work, like what support might you get, what medical. I know for some people they get like GP appointments like through their kind of medical support through work. Do it, get second opinions. If you feel like people aren't taking you seriously, advocate for yourself. So, yeah, hopefully you guys have found that interesting and it's kind of hit home for some of you a little bit and has been something that you've wanted to hear people talk about. Like always, I will have a bit of humour about things, but less so in this episode because I do feel like it takes the piss. It really does. And like I've seen it before, like a meme where people go, I'm not being funny, but can I not just get like a text each month that says I'm not pregnant? Because that would just be ideal. Like we're living in 2026, babe. Surely I don't need to bleed from my vagina at this point. I should just be able to say, oh, am I pregnant? No, I'm not. Great. Let's go again. But unfortunately not. I mean, for some people, obviously they're on a contraceptive where they don't bleed, but unfortunately for me, those contraceptives just don't work for me and I bleed 24/7 instead. So again, it's making sure that you're being mindful when you're talking to friends because just because one thing works for you, it doesn't mean it will work for another and vice versa. So yeah, I want to end the week on the TikTok of the week. Now, I haven't done one about hormones because I found one that really made me laugh. And it's a creator called Ben. I can't remember his full, I'll get it up. And if you're watching this, I'll put like a tag to it. And it basically said, it's so funny because it's just how true is this? So he put a TikTok on and it was just a picture of himself smiling, which I just thought was cute anyway, bless him. And then it says, hold on, the amount of effort it takes to just have a mid physique, a tidy ish house, and no empty wrappers in your car is actually a joke. And if that does not summarize adulthood, I don't know what does. Because I work hard at the gym. Now, I'm in good physical shape. I know that. But I graft for it. And I have been doing so for years. It's like 3 years, like pretty much since my dad passed away, like 2.5 years of hard graft, going to the gym, doing pole fitness, getting my steps in, tracking my calories, weighing my food, which, first world problems. But for how hard I work, I would want a better physique. Tidying the house, keeping it clean. Hoovered the carpet yesterday. Looks like it needs hoovering again. Looks like it's not been hoovered in 2 weeks. My car, I'm not going to lie, guys. My car's dirty. There's just, it's like water bottles. I don't do go drive-throughs and stuff like that because I'm an anxious queen and I can't speak to people in the drive-through. All of my friends know this. I can do a drive-through if somebody else is in the car with me. If I'm on my own, she's not doing the drive-through. And if I have ever done it, I'm going to give myself a pat on the back because those days are wins for me. So it's not like food rubbish, although there's probably like some protein bar, like fucking packets and stuff like that. But it's just water balls everywhere. And yeah. So that one hit home for me. So I thought that's my TikTok of the week. Just the amount of effort it takes basically just to look like you've got your crap together. And again, you never do. And if anyone's there with a banging body, a spotless house without a cleaner, and your car is clean, message me and tell me how you're doing it. And if you have a full-time job, that's my caveat. Also, pets. Love my house rabbits. They are the bane of my life in terms of cleaning because they are litter trained. They'll go to the toilet in a litter box. But the hay, man. One of them's got long hair. There's hay. He just looks like a scarecrow 99% of the time. And then hay gets everywhere because he jumps out of his litter box, head full of hay, and traipses it around the room. So I spend 99% of my time sweeping up hair and hay from their room. Luckily for me, for whatever weird reason. They won't walk on any floor that's not carpeted. Some would say they're bougie and spoiled. Others would say, that I'm a brilliant trainer, but they won't come out of their room, even though there's no the door's open. They can come out if they wanted to. They just don't, because it means walking on wooden floor. So I'm lucky that the dirt is contained to their room. So when I clean it each day, I don't have to clean the whole entire house, but still, I just feel like it's a joke. So anyway, that is my TikTok of the week. I hope you guys are enjoying the format. I'm going to have a think about what I talk about next week. And yeah, give me some feedback. When I've recorded this, the first episode isn't out yet. So I don't know how it's gone down. I don't know if you guys have got more questions. And I'm just looking forward to speaking to you guys. And yeah, see you all soon. Don't forget to follow us.